Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, how are my snipers doing today? I hope you guys are doing fantastic. Listen, today we're going to be talking about the one and only Zebec. Now, I want to address a comment I saw on my video, right? Because I saw someone say, oh, here we go, man's creating new scenarios every single day, yada, yada, yada. I saw how like 3 or 4 likes. So let's just say 5 people agree with that statement. I saw some people come to my defense, so thank you so much for that. But listen, right? Part of trading is looking for confirmations, right? Part of trading is looking for confirmations. So, yes, sometimes I am going to give you 2 scenarios because I want you to be prepared, right? If scenario A does this, it means this. If scenario B does this, it means this. And that's a trader's mentality, right? Traders are not supposed to just go in blindly off faith. Yes, you want to have faith in life. It's very, very important. And, faith over fear any day. So it can help you in different aspects. But in terms of the technical side, when it comes to trading, like you have to be looking at what the candles are telling you, right? And that's why sometimes, yes, I will give scenario A, scenario B, because sometimes we're just on the sidelines waiting, right? You don't always see the most clear picture as a trader instantly. Sometimes you need to be waiting, especially, right, if we're talking about bigger time frames. Because if I'm looking at the monthly chart, I'm going to need a lot of data. If I'm looking at the weekly chart, I'm still going to need some data. If I'm looking at the daily and etc., and then you have to mix all of them together, right? Trading can get really, really complicated because you have multiple time frames and there's structure inside structure. So yes, sometimes I will give you multiple scenarios, but overall, if you've been watching technical analysis on my channel for some time, we've been calling for lower prices consistently. And that hasn't changed. And anytime there has been a rise in price, we'd say very, very critical information of, hey guys, certain things need to play out if we want to even get excited. One of the biggest and most recent ones was when we came back to this zone. We retested it on the 11th, right? The 10th and 11th. And I said, hey, we need strong daily candle closes here. And we need to see if anything kind of sideways movement, very little sell-off movement to continue to go further up, and how we need to start taking out these swing highs. Look, that didn't happen. We closed the way we closed. We said we're going to be going further down. What happened? We went further down. Then guess what? We have more information. We created a lower low, right? In terms of swing points, we created a lower low. There's a low here. There's a lower low here. In terms of high points, we have a high one, a lower high, and another lower high. Then in recent times, let's just say near the end of November, we started to go up. However, once again, we made the statement of saying, hey, listen, right? This 0.0036 zone is a massive zone. And for us to even be bullish, right, we need to flip this. And you can see we didn't flip it. We got the doji candle. We said, okay, guys, remember, I said this on the 4-hour chart. I'm like, structure is still okay technically right now, but it looks very, very weak. Be careful for downside movement. I posted a video next day when we look at the charts. Guess what? We broke below the zone. What do we say? Well, the only little hope we have here is trying to bounce off this zone. But as of right now, there's no real confirmations. We are breaking to the downside. We have broken to the downside, and we need to reflip if we even want to consider going back up, right, and being bullish. And guess what? We never did. We showed a little bit of momentum, right? We talked about consistently how we are consistently creating lower and lower and lower highs. We're breaking out of this general zone, right? We fell back below it. We started to see some momentum. We saw some momentum, and we said how crucial it is for us to be holding this zone because this is a minor key zone for us. And guess what? It was valid. We saw a little bit of momentum. We started to strike, but guess what? Once again, reversal signs. Because here's the thing. Something can reverse the upside for a couple hours, a couple of days, even a few short weeks, but then it can just re-reverse once again the opposite direction. And that's part of trading, right? That is part of trading. That's why getting the literal bottom is really hard and getting the literal top is really, really hard. In the past with Zebec, in my own experience that we've, called out in the private community and the channel, right? We talked about how we bought somewhere down here. Generally speaking, we bought somewhere down here. I didn't get the literal bottom. That's fine with me. And guess what? When we sold somewhere over here. I didn't get the literal top, but guess what? That's fine with me. I already saw reversal signs happening up here, and I saw reversal signs happening down here. And guess what? That was a nice win for me. It was more or less, over 3.5x, right? And it's all documented in the private community and on my previous old videos from months ago. So, yeah, guys, like, if something shows reversal signs, I'm going to be mentioning them. And sometimes I'm going to be mentioning how we just have to be patient and wait to see what price action tells us, because we are simply needing more confirmation, because we're kind of in a gray zone. And with, me updating this practically daily, right? Doing double uploads for Zebec and one of them being consistent upload for the technical analysis, we only have so much data. And sometimes it's just going to be the same thing. Hey guys, there's no confirmations. We are consistently creating, lower points or higher points. We still expect a little bit more upside movement, or we expect a little bit more downside movement. And that's just how the cookie crumbles. Sometimes, it's going to be, hey, we're kind of in a 50-50 zone. We need to wait for a daily candle. We need to wait for a weekly candle to get confirmation. And that's just also how the cookie crumbles. So hopefully, for those that listen to this, you guys understood. But listen, we are actually at a decent zone over here. Now, granted, things are not looking the best. We did have some rejections over here the last few days, and we did sell off. We could also see Bitcoin is selling off. It's kind of in a very, very weird structure as well. I'm not the biggest fan of this type of structure. It's technically still in a short-term bullish structure, right? We are still consistently creating higher and higher and higher lows as of right now, and higher and higher and higher highs. But I'm never a fan of this, right? You guys know me. I hate when it starts going like this. It always feels like it's very, very short-lived. If anything, I kind of like when, things, let's just say, would get manipulated to the downside. They would go up heavy, sideways, and then like this. That's what I want to see. I don't ever really like the diagonal movement. It just doesn't seem like the bottom, It can be near the bottom, but it doesn't seem like it's the bottom. So we'll be monitoring Bitcoin. We'll be monitoring everything. Generally speaking, it's hard to be flipping, for example, this 3-month candle for it to be all of a sudden bullish. Not impossible, right? Not impossible. This is very, very important to see how December closes. And that's it. I'm waiting for the December close, because the December close will indicate how the 3-month candle closes. And the 3-month candle closes poorly, that means altcoin season is just going to be around the corner. If it closes very, very well, that means we still have probably an extra 3 months before altcoin season would happen, at least, right? That could still extend a little further, but at least 3 more months. So we have to be patient for this month. Listen, back to Zebec. When we go and look at the higher time frames, right, we can see as of right now, the yearly candle is bullish. So we can very well flip, right? We very well can flip. But unfortunately, since we are tied to Bitcoin, it's going to be very, very hard. Now, here's the deal, people. We are actually setting up for a very nice yearly candle, which would make me believe that in 2026, we would tap somewhere back into the 0.0022122 for a final time, and then we would blast off. I would not be surprised if December is fairly slow. January, the beginning of January is manipulation, but then by the time mid to late January happens, we already start recovering. I would not be surprised if that's the case, because, like I said, we would be tapping into a very, very nice yearly candle, and we're very close to it, so we don't have that much to be going down. Look, at the end of the day, I still expect kind of the same thing. We are just kind of in a trend, right? When we go to something like the weekly, I see clear as day, we are in this type of trend, and we are looking to be eventually going sideways and starting to break out once again. Beginning of 2026 to mid 2026 is when I expect the reversals. Okay. Last time I talked about how we were going down here, how we were creating similar types of structure, right? The same way we are creating structure right now. And yeah, people can say, there's no coincidences, there's nothing repeats itself. But I would argue, and I'll show you an example with ICP, that, history shows otherwise. If we look at something like ICP, right, this is not about the coin, this is about the structure. We have a top, right? Boom, boom. We have a top, top. Okay, we have a flat line, down, struggle, manipulation that takes out all of the sell side liquidity. It is literally in no man's land. Manipulation that takes out all the sell side liquidity. We are in no man's land. And then guess what? Certain type of reversals. So what do we have left for ICP? To go up like this, and then blast off, right? But like I'm saying, the structure is very, very similar. The way everything's playing out is very, very similar. And I believe Zebec is doing the exact same thing, that we are looking to start to bottom out, have a final manipulation before we blast off. That is it though, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you guys did enjoy. I love you guys so, so much. In the short term, we're looking to see how we react off of the 0.0025, as this is an area where we really need to blast off before, we get we practically need to blast off this area and go up really high, because if we don't, then we will just continue to be going down. That is it though, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you guys did enjoy, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Goodbye.